I joined OM last January for 1 year. I was with the GAZ Team in Zurich, and our main goal was to bring hope back to the marginalized people, mainly within Zurich's inner city. My first 2.5 to 3 months were a training time as well as team bonding time. It was a very intense time, and each day was filled with Bible study type teachings, training on how to live and work in Zurich, and also learning how people respond to missions in Europe. We also had a very small amount of German training on the side. Then by April, it was time for ministry to start and to really become a full-time part of our daily lives. As a team, we were involved in a lot of different things, and for now, I would like to share a little bit about 4 of my main ministries. On Tuesday nights was something called Rahab, and it was working together with 2 other ladies, and we were ministering to the prostitutes and exploited women on the streets of Zurich. We would visit their homes and working places and also brothels when we were allowed in. We would pray with the women and distribute Bibles when they were open to it. We also had a coffee house that was open all night, where there was coffee and drinks and food for the women that they could just come and have for free, and often they would come there and stay the night and just talk when they were able to. One cool thing for me about this ministry was the fact that many of the women we met, they weren't actually Swiss, and so they didn't know any German, so they were kind of in the same place as me, and they would speak English, so it was cool to be able to speak English to the woman. Tuesday nights was always an eye-opening and a challenging time for me to see such horrible things happening. So thank you for your prayers, and I believe that they really made it so that I was never scared while I was on the streets. Every Saturday afternoon was something called Power Kids, which was a girls' club with girls age 5 all the way up to 14, and there was usually about 30 to 40 girls that would come. This girls' club was in a neighborhood where many of the families were Muslim, and so pretty much all the girls in the girls' club were also Muslim girls. It was almost always the 4 most tiring hours of my week, but it was always worth it. We also spent every Wednesday just visiting the girls and their families and gaining trust from their parents. Wednesday was also our prayer day for this neighborhood, and we would just walk around the neighborhood praying for the people there, the families, the girls, and also just proclaiming God in the area. We planned some special evenings in our own home for a few of the older girls, and these were always really special times together with the girls, where they would really open up to us and have good talks with us. It was really rewarding to see the changes in these girls by the end. On Friday was something called Imbiss, and this was a place where street people would come into a church for a spaghetti dinner. So there was always room for about 100 people, and it was always full, plus all of the people's dogs, and even one man had 2 pet rats that he would bring with him every time. So we would just serve the people dinner and spend time in conversation with them together, also with coffee after. We would also have a short devotion and singing time together, and once my German was good enough, I was given the leadership over all of the workers and the guests in this ministry, just making sure everyone got fed and everything was done, and that there was no fights between the workers or fights between the guests. So part of Imbiss was something called Schweizertafel, and it was basically a big van that would come from grocery stores full of food, and Sarah, my teammate, and I would say what we wanted, and then we would distribute this food to the people in Imbiss so that they could have food to eat for the rest of the week. After Imbiss was something called Glaubenvertiefen, which was basically a Bible study group, and it was one of my favorite ministries, and it was a group of new Christians who were really in a growing stage and asking lots of questions and really open to discipleship. And so I had the privilege, together with another lady, of leading this group, and I was able to lead in German, which was really exciting. And it was just amazing for me to walk alongside these people, and even though they were all older than me, it was encouraging to me to see the way they respected me and were open to my leadership for them. Then Thursday evenings was confirmation class, and in Switzerland when you turn 16 you go through a year of confirmation classes, and this is in state churches with pastors who almost always are not believers, and so the youth meet for a class once a week together with the pastor. Well, Liz and I, my teammate, somehow managed to fall into an opportunity with the state church in our area, basically to join in with this class of about 12 youth. The pastor gave us full responsibility to take over the class for him and to talk about whatever we wanted to talk about. And so for us, this was an obvious God opportunity. As we got to know the youth, we realized that none of them actually knew Jesus, and some of them had never even heard about Jesus before, and they were just really confused with faith altogether. So Liz and I took the opportunity to share stories from our lives, showing them what it looks like to be a Christian, as well as sharing the gospel with them. So 12 youth had the opportunity to hear about Jesus for the very first time, and we continue to pray now for their salvation. So those were just 4 of the ministries that I was involved in this past year, and of course there were many more. But through all of the ministries that we were involved in as a team, our goal was always to bring people closer to Jesus. But it was also our prayer for each other as a team. And it was our prayer that God wouldn't just transform the lives of the street people, the kids, the teens, and everyone that we were working with, but that He would also transform our own lives. And that we would grow closer to Him and be open to what He wanted to teach and work on in us. And so as I'm at home now, I've been debriefing my past year a little bit, and I'm noticing that there are many things that I've learned or become grounded in over the past year. So in the GAZ team, there was kind of like 4 different areas of life: ministry life, team life, teachings and Bible study time, and also personal time with God. And so now as I look back, I realize that each of these different areas challenged me in different ways and also taught me different things. Before I went to Switzerland, I began to pray and ask God that I would see people the way that He sees them, more from His perspective. Then, in Imbis, I met a lady named Erika. She is a very special lady, but can also be very challenging to be around. At first, she was always in a conflict with someone or arguing or fighting about something, and she had really high anxiety problems and problems with OCD. She couldn't get work anywhere, and she lived on the street, so we would see each other every Friday in Imbis. And for some reason, she trusted me and took a liking to me right away. So over time, we actually developed a really special friendship, and I started to see more and more good qualities in her. Then I realized that instead of just being a guest in Imbis, she wanted to be a helper and to serve the other people there as well. Normally someone like her wouldn't have the chance to be given responsibility like that. But after prayerful consideration, Erika was given the opportunity to serve and even help with cleaning in the church. And I was amazed at how just a small thing like that gave her such a sense of worth and joy. So I have learned to view people in different ways through this, and I have learned to see the huge potential in marginalized people and the people that we often just see as useless. I will not forget about Erika. So I was living in a team together with 5 other people. We were living very closely together and working together almost every day, all day. So we went through a lot of really intense situations, and we were also really able to challenge each other. The one cool thing was that even though we came from 5 different countries, we all had one thing in common. We all loved Jesus and had a personal relationship to Jesus and a desire to share that with other people. But in getting to know some of the other girls' family and church backgrounds, I realized just how blessed I really am, and how much of a blessing it is to have a mission-minded church that blesses and supports their missionaries so generously. And I also learned to become more thankful just for the Christian family and area that I grew up in. When I went to Zurich, I was leaving everything I knew and joining a bunch of people who had no idea who I was, what I had accomplished in my past, or anything that I'd done. Somehow I thought I'd experienced some insecure feelings and feelings that I would have to prove myself to these new people. But the amazing thing was that I didn't. My leaders, as well as the street people, weren't looking at me for what I'd done. In fact, they really didn't care at all, but just the fact that I loved Jesus was enough. And so I strongly realized that my true identity is in Jesus. It's not what I've done that makes me who I am, but rather it's Jesus in me. And I learned over and over again that my identity is in Christ. And through our teachings and Bible studies, I became grounded into the fact that I am a daughter of the King, and that, as it says in Philippians 3:20, my citizenship is in heaven. That is something that became heart knowledge for me, and not just something that I knew in my head.